I'm Adam. And I'm Tango. And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Hey Tango, did you hear about the giants that were spotted in the nearby forest? Giants? Really? Are you sure they're not just seeing things after too many late night grading sessions? No, I'm serious. They're huge, like big enough to play basketball with trees. Wow, that's alarming. But hey, maybe they can help me collect shoes. With their massive hands, they could probably grab a dozen pairs at once. Imagine the sight of giants roaming around with shoes dangling from their fingers like keychains. Yeah, they'd be the ultimate shoe collectors. We could even organize a shoe swap with them. They'd bring in shoes from their giant friends, and we could exchange them for, well, maybe not magic beans, but something equally cool. True. Although I'm not sure how they'd fit into our classroom. Can you imagine the desks they need? We might have to move our lessons to a football field just to accommodate them. Oh, absolutely. And forget about using regular pencils. They'd need tree trunks as pencils just to write their names. Today's book retells the story of Nobel Peace Prize nominee Greta Thunberg, the Swedish teenager who has led a global movement to raise awareness about the world's climate crisis, using allegory to make this important topic accessible to young children. Let's get started. Greta and the Giants, inspired by Greta Thunberg's Stand to Save the World, by Zoë Tucker, illustrated by Zoe Persico. There once was a girl who lived at the heart of a beautiful forest. Her name was Greta. One morning, things weren't quite as they should be. Greta stepped out into her yard, and there, huddled together in the shadows of the trees, were all the animals of the forest. A soft, silvery brown wolf stepped forward with his tail low to the ground. "Please help us," he whispered. "The forest is broken, and we don't know where to go. The giants are ruining our home." The giants had always been there, for as long as Greta could remember. But now they were worse than ever. They were huge, lumbering oafs, and they were always busy. They chopped down trees to build homes. Then they chopped down more trees and built bigger homes. The houses grew into towns, and the towns grew into cities. They built factories and shops and cars and planes. They worked all day and all night, until eventually there was hardly any forest left. But the greedy giants had forgotten how wonderful the forest was. They didn't see all the little birds and bugs and butterflies and bears, and trembled in the shadows. And no one told them to stop because everyone was scared of them. Everyone except Greta. "Will you help us?" asked the wolf. Greta looked around her. The animals looked tired and sad. She had to help them. But how? Then, Greta had an idea. The next morning, Greta went to the middle of the forest and waited for the giants to come. She stood alone, holding up a big sign. The sign said stop. She waited and waited. Hey, I was thinking, wouldn't it be fun if we did something to help a cause? Like what? Trotting for charity? Exactly. We could organize a fundraiser. How about a sponsored gallopathon? Whoa there, slow down, Adam. I'm for all horsing around, but galloping nonstop, my hooves might get tired. Fair point, Tango. How about a bake sale instead? We can bake horse-shaped cookies. Now you're talking. I've always wanted to see myself in cookie form. But, can we make sure those cookies don't end up tasting like hay? Well, of course. We'll stick to the classic chocolate chip recipe. So what do you say, are you in? Nay problem, Adam. Let's hoof it and make a difference. All right, Tango, let's saddle up and get baking. On the first day, the giants didn't see her and lumbered on by. And on the second and third, too. But on the fourth day, something strange happened. A little boy who had been watching Greta made a sign and came and sat down next to her. He didn't say much, but Greta knew he felt like she did. Soon, more people and animals saw what they were doing and joined in too. Before long, a huge crowd filled the forest, stretching out to the city and the roads beyond. They stood together and waited. The crowd was so huge that the giants were stopped in their tracks. "Please stop," Greta cried. "Your greedy behavior is spoiling our home. You've broken the trees and trampled the flowers, and now the bees and birds have flown away. These animals are homeless and our forest is dying." After Greta had spoken, everything was silent. But then, everyone in the crowd began to shout, "The smoke from your fires is choking the air. You can help plant some new ones. And please stop cutting down the trees. We need to take care of our forest and live together. Will you please try?" they all said. The giants shuffled and fidgeted and stomped their feet on the ground. They were embarrassed and a little bit sad. You see, the giants were so busy building, they didn't see what they were doing to the forest or the animals who lived there. The giants felt terrible. "We're sorry," they said, and they promised to try harder. So, from that day on, the greedy giants weren't so greedy. They slowed down and learned to sit quietly. They stopped working all the time and instead took up new hobbies.
I still can't believe you insisted on decorating those cupcakes with carrots instead of sprinkles. Hey, I wanted to add a little horse flair to the event. Besides, who wouldn't want a carrot-topped cupcake? Well, I guess it makes sense if they were carrot cake flavor, but they weren't. But remember when you accidentally sneezed and blew powdered sugar all over Mrs. Jenkins? That was a sticky situation. But let's be honest, she looked like a powdered donut for the rest of the day. And what about when you tried to balance the tray of cookies on your back while greeting people at the entrance? Hey, I was just trying to be helpful. Who knew balancing baked goods on a horse was so challenging? Well, despite the mishaps, we did manage to raise a decent amount of money for charity. That's true, and the best part was seeing the smiles on everyone's faces, even if some of those smiles were powdered sugar coated. Exactly. It was definitely a memorable bake sale, thanks to you, Tango. Anytime you need a four-legged sous chef, you know where to find me.
They stopped chopping down trees and learned all about gardening and living in the forest. They cooked, repaired, tidied, and shared, and before long, the forest became more beautiful than they could ever have imagined. This story is inspired by a real girl called Greta Thunberg. When Greta was not much older than you, she found out about something called climate change. This means the world is getting hotter and hotter, and this is causing a lot of damage. Scientists all agree that this rising temperature is down to human activity. When we burn coal, oil, and gas called fossil fuels, something called carbon dioxide is released into the air, and this makes the world warm up. The polar ice is melting and sea levels are rising. Forests are being chopped down and animals are left homeless. The Earth is already 1 degree Celsius hotter than it used to be. This has caused worse wildfires, storms, droughts, and floods, and more than 1 million people living near the coast have been forced to leave their homes. If we carry on as we are, things will only get worse. Climate change is the biggest crisis humans have ever faced. Greta knew all this, and she couldn't understand why no one was doing anything about it. So, when she was 15, she went on a strike from school, sitting outside the Swedish government building and holding a sign that said "Strike for Climate." Over time, people stopped to join her, and now her protest has encouraged children and adults from all over the world to stand up for climate change too. Greta has spoken to politicians from many different countries, and in 2019, she was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize. The story you've just read has a happy ending, but in the real world, Greta is still fighting the giants. They may not be easy to see as they are in this book, but they are there, and some of the giants don't want to change their ways. That's why Greta needs your help. You might think you're too little, but Greta says no one is too small to make a difference. Here are some things that you can do to help Greta. Learn everything you can about climate change. Tell your friends and family all about what you've learned. Ask your parents or guardians to take you on a climate protest so you can stand up to the giants. Ask your teacher if your class can write or to visit your elected officials to ask them to stop climate change. Walk, run, cycle, or take the bus or train instead of getting in the car or taking a plane. This means less fossil fuels are burned. Try to get your family to eat less meat. Ask your parents or guardians to buy food made nearby instead of from far away country. Look after the things you have. Mend them when they're broken instead of buying new things. Share them with your friends when you've finished with them. We might think that it won't make a difference, but if we all work together, we can change the world.
Do you know what we can do to help the environment? What's up, Adam? I was thinking maybe we could start by reducing our carbon footprint. Carbon hoofprint? Is that like stepping lightly on the grass? Kind of, but it means being mindful of how much carbon dioxide we produce. Oh, I got it. So should I stop exhaling so much? No, you need to keep breathing. But maybe we could find other ways to cut down on emissions, like carpooling. Carpooling? With who? The zebras? Well, maybe not. But we could encourage people to ride bikes instead of driving elsewhere. I don't know if my horseshoes are good for pedaling. Fair point. Maybe we could plant some trees instead. They help absorb carbon dioxide from the air. Trees, huh? Can we eat them too? No. You can't eat the trees, but you can definitely appreciate them for all the oxygen they give us. All right, I guess I can munch on some grass instead. It's my way of giving back to nature. That's the spirit. And if you want to give back to us, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm Adam. And I'm Tango. And this is Where There's a Williams, There's a Way. Did you know? In Greek mythology, the giants were monstrous, savage creatures that were often depicted with men's bodies ending in serpentine legs. The giants represented the human body enlarged to the point of being monstrous, evoked terror, and remind humans of their body's frailty and mortality.